Good afternoon, everyone. We're excited to be here today to talk to you about a local government guide to the Chesapeake Bay. These are educational modules for local elected officials geared to talk about watershed issues through the lens of their priorities. Again, my name is Cattell Noll. I work at the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, and part of my role is to coordinate the local leadership work group, which is part of the Chesapeake Bay program. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Ola now so she can introduce herself.
Thanks, Laura, and hi, everyone. My name is Ola-Imani Davis. And in addition to my role at the Alliance, I also provide staffing support to the Local Government Advisory Committee within the Chesapeake Bay program. And they are primarily a group of local elected officials from around the Chesapeake Bay region who are appointed by their respective governors to advise them on the challenges of local governments face in their communities. So I'm going to pick up and begin with the why. Why develop a local government guide to the Chesapeake Bay? So big picture, topics like mitigating flood risk or increasing tree canopy are constantly evolving in complexity. And the decisions made on these efforts can have major impacts on our communities. And elected officials are responsible for making sure that these decisions benefit not only their community's social and economic well-being, but the natural environment that surrounds them as well. So in our work, Laura and I have begun to understand just how many things local officials are tasked with and how easy environmental concerns can slip to the bottom of their list. But having access to a resource that can easily translate that environmental data as it relates to the needs of the community can really bridge that gap in the communication of those concerns as well as their overall relevance. And also thinking about elections, it's important for incoming officials to get up to speed as well. So in creating this guide, the intention was to establish a solution-oriented educational resource that is evergreen in content, easily digestible, and it connects the science to the people. And we kind of hope that it can assist local governments in making those well-informed environmental decisions. So what are we talking about today? Laura will give an overview of the guide itself, as well as each of its individual modules. She will also give you a deeper glimpse into each of the modules and show off a couple of those features. Next, I will talk to you all about how the modules have been used to date. And finally, we'll leave you with what we hope will be the next steps to continue the growth and the outreach of the guide into the future. So to go ahead and get us started, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Laura.
Thank you, Ola. So as Ola said, we're going to just sort of dive right in here and begin with an overview of the modules. So, what are these? This is a series of 7 educational modules. Each is a PowerPoint, only about 30 slides, so it's digestible, and they each have an accompanying handout. And again, the goal is just 101 level knowledge that local officials need so they can quickly get up to speed on watershed issues. And this is really all about empowering those local officials to make the decisions that are right for their community on clean water issues. Oops. So there are 4 lenses that we use throughout the modules. The first is economic development, public health and safety, infrastructure maintenance, and finance and education. And because we know that those are 4 things that local officials, care about, they make decisions every day through, within these buckets. And so we want to talk about clean water issues through the lens of public health, through the lens of infrastructure maintenance and finance, so that we're connecting directly with what local officials are already thinking about and already talking about. As I mentioned, these are PowerPoint slides. They're designed to be easily customized and shared. We'll make sure you all get a link to the modules so you can download them. They are editable. You can put your logo on it. You can edit the content, make it relevant to the local officials in your network. And I think that adaptability is really a strength that they bring, that they can be customized to local audiences. So I want to give you a quick overview of the topics that are covered in these 7 modules. I'll begin by saying 2 topics you won't see, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and climate change. And we didn't make those their own modules because those issues are so cross-cutting that we wanted to build them into all 7 of the modules. So the content is here, but it's not the headline of any of these modules because we know that DEIJ issues and climate issues touch everything. And so we wanted to build it in to frame it that way for folks. The first module, How Your Watershed Works, is just a 101 about the water cycle. What is a watershed? And giving that high level overview of how it connects to economic development, how our economy is dependent on clean water, how it connects to public health and safety. We all, have some source of our drinking water, and so the decisions we make impact our public health. The second module, Foundations of Clean Water, is really an overview of the laws and agreements that would be relevant to local officials in the watershed. It's also a 101 about the governmental structure that it comes into play here. What is the EPA? What is the Chesapeake Bay program? What is the Clean Water Act? And again, getting those folks that 101 level knowledge that they need to be true partners in our work. So these first 2 are kind of the foundational 2 modules. And then the rest are more subject matter. So module 3, Clean Water for the Economy, is really leaning into how our economy is dependent on clean water. And it's not just the fisheries, which you might think of, it's also outdoor recreation, it's hunting, it's agriculture. A fun one that we highlight in here is breweries. Breweries are dependent on clean water. And so when we take actions to clean up the water in our community, we attract some of those businesses to our communities. Module 4, capitalizing on the benefits of trees. This is kind of lumping tree canopy, forest buffers, and forest conservation all together. We know that trees bring immense benefits to our communities. And so the second half of this then is, how can we really capitalize on those benefits? What are the actionable things we can do to increase tree canopy in our community? Module 5 is highly relevant to local governments, preserving local character and landscapes. The first half is all about land use, kind of the value that conserved lands bring to our communities. And then the second half is, what are the policies? What are the planning tools? What are the tools in the toolbox to help us achieve those quality of life benefits that we're looking for? Module 6, protecting community infrastructure through stormwater resilience. We've gotten a lot of traction with this one because local officials every day are making decisions about stormwater. It's also a pretty technical topic. And so if you are a brand new local elected official, you might not know what MS4 stands for. And so this is the module that kind of breaks that down for you and helps you understand how stormwater runoff, impacts flooding in your community. And we do talk quite a bit more about climate change in this module, thinking about increased sea level rise and increased flooding from high intensity storms. And then module 7 is all about workforce development, building the workforce of today and tomorrow. How can we capitalize on the investments we're making in green infrastructure to really increase jobs in our community and increase the technical capacity of folks in our community to do those green jobs? So I'm going to move now into the features of each module. These are the things you'll see in each of those 7 topic areas I covered. So they all begin with what you'll learn. These are kind of the learning objectives framed as questions so that folks know right up front the kind of information that's going to be provided in that module. They all end with the what you can do, which are the really actionable next steps. So if a local elected official has questions about stormwater, we recommend they go talk to their MS4 coordinator or their stormwater engineer. If they have questions about land use, we point them toward their planning commission. Those are a great opportunity to tailor the educational modules. If there's a specific action that you're trying to work with your local elected officials on, this could be a space to put that action in. Then the last one is to learn more. That's resources. So we want to point folks towards longer reports, detailed information, data, maps. These slides again it's only about 30 slides per module. So it's really that 101 level knowledge, but we want to make sure we're pointing folks towards the deeper content that they might need as they take their next steps. I'll say also that each of the modules has sources cited in the notes section of each PowerPoint slide. We want to make sure we're citing our sources. And then they all end with a glossary that defines keywords. So here is a quick shot of the one pager. I mentioned each of the modules comes with like a handout kind of material. So this is an example of the content we just covered as a one pager kind of handout. We found these are really great to email to people, or if you're giving a panel presentation, this is a handout afterwards. It's a really succinct summary of what's in the deeper 30 slide modules. Here's an example of what one of the slides looks like. They're highly visual, engaging. You can see, this is a history of Chesapeake Bay protection. So it's beginning in 1972 with the Clean Water Act and going up, through the most recent watershed agreement and even to the DEIJ statement that was adopted last year. These are all linked. So you see where it's underlined. That's a really great opportunity to link directly to that material. So again, this is 101, but we want to make sure they have access to that deeper content if they're interested in it. Another example slide, this one's about living shorelines. I love how visual this slide is. It does give a definition of a living shoreline, but you can just see right off the bat what a living shoreline means. It means there's space for crabs, for fish, for a heron here, but there's still space for people. And on both ends of the slide, you can see a house. And I think that will really resonate with local officials that we're finding a way to live in harmony with nature. You can also see here that climate connection in the bottom corner. So that's what the climate call-out boxes look like, or the DEIJ call-out boxes. So in this case, it's talking about sea level rise. So, this is prompting an elected official. If you're thinking about living shorelines in your community, you need to be mindful of how seas might rise in the coming years and how that might impact your living shoreline. So I'm going to turn it over to Ola now that you've kind of gotten a glimpse of what the modules are, and she's going to walk you through how the modules have been used to date.
All right, thank you so much, Laura. Moving on, oops, sorry. We want to take a closer look at what we've seen so far since sharing the modules. But first, I want to give a little bit of a background on how we initially envisioned the modules to be used. So in this diagram, it depicts our thoughts engaging with local elected officials. You'll see that the audience is on one side, which represents the our local officials. And that's on one side, and the subject matter experts on the other. And the subject matter experts are folks like yourselves, those who really know these topics like wetlands, tree canopy, or stormwater. Moving on to translators, that's kind of where we see ourselves, as we're able to take that technical material from the subject matter experts and condense it into something that is helpful or more digestible for the audience. And this is basically the modules, right? They are a product of that translation. So now the key disseminator of this material is the trusted sources, and they are various state associations, such as the Maryland Association of Counties, Virginia Municipal League, or Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, as a couple examples. And these are places that many local elected officials go to, and they also trust receiving this kind of information from. And we partner with many of these trusted sources on the delivery of these modules. But to make for that smoother delivery, this is where the importance, like Laura said, of making each of these modules editable really comes in handy, because the audience of elected officials can vary in just so many ways. So now that the guide is out in the world, I did want to share with you all a few examples of how we've seen the modules being used. So the one-pagers that Laura referred to has served as supplementary educational handouts at both in-person and virtual events. The County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania used various module one-pagers as handouts during their August 9th panel titled The Outdoor Recreation Economy. The module presentations have also been used in the form of general webinars or presentations that are specifically tailored for local governments. And we have seen presentations like that used by Virginia's Rivanna River Basin Commission, specifically during their September conference on stormwater resilience, as well as the University of Delaware's Water Resources Institute. And that was used for their presentations to local government officials. A few other examples. The modules have been featured in magazine articles and other communications platforms to serve as a resource material. Most recently, they were listed in an article featured in the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs May 2021 magazine. The article was based around stormwater. And finally, the modules have been incorporated into local government professional development courses. The Maryland Municipal League and the Maryland Association of Counties will offer an elective course on how your watershed works using the modules beginning on November 4th. And so we try to track examples like these to understand who is using these modules and how. So to summarize, about 145 people have accessed the editable versions of these modules. They have been utilized in Delaware, Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, and in Virginia, so almost covering the watershed. And overall, the modules have reached an estimated 1,500 local government officials and staff. But before we move forward, we want to hear from you. How do you think you could use the local government guide to engage local officials in your network? I mean, how could you see the guide or its modules being most impactful in your work or experiences? We're going to go ahead and place a link in the chat to a Jamboard where you can offer your thoughts, and maybe we can revisit them during the Q&A. And again, we're interested, so please feel free to leave more than one thought or comment if you wish. And as you're thinking of how you can use the local government guide, we want to share with you a little bit more about what we're working on next. Thinking back, another goal of tracking that usage of the current modules is to continuously understand how to develop the guide into a stronger resource. Hence our thoughts around a local government guide 2.0. With this update to the guide, we would develop 3 to 4 educational modules. And some of those topics could include environmental or public health, outdoor recreation, agriculture, and even education and stewardship. We would also develop an online database where these educational materials and resources could be easily accessed. And finally, we would coordinate some training sessions for local government staff using each of the modules created to date. So TBD on that, but we're super duper excited for what's to come next for the guide. So that's it from us. Laura and I want to thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to discussing the local government guide to the Chesapeake Bay with you and seeing your thoughts on how you could use the guide as well. So thank you very much.